They say history is written by the victors, but this ain't one they wanted to write, because the people who usually win got outsmarted, and not with weapons, not with an army, but by a 42-year-old black woman named Eliza Winston, who walked into a courtroom and used their own laws to win her freedom. And you see, this is exactly why they didn't want us to know how to read. Because once you knew how to read, you start learning how the system works. And once you understand how it works, you can figure out how to break it, or beat it, or use it against the very people who built it to trap you. And Eliza did all of that. And that's why they tried to bury this story. But we're about to bring it back. Let's get into it. Eliza Winston had already survived more than most. She was sold away from her family, moved between several states. For over 30 years, she was enslaved by the family of President Andrew Jackson, gifted to his great niece, and at one point, her legal status was held in trust by a cousin of President James K. Polk, Jackson's political protege. That means Eliza wasn't just tied to slavery, she was tied to presidential power. She married a free black man, and he tried to buy her freedom. But before the sale was complete, he died. And Eliza, she was sold again, and this time to Richard Christmas, a white man from Mississippi. In the summer of 1860, the Christmas family traveled north to St. Anthony, Minnesota. He brought Eliza with him to care for his wife Mary, who was sick, and their daughter. They checked into the Winslow House, which was a popular resort that regularly welcomed wealthy Southern slaveholders. And even though Minnesota had banned slavery in its state constitution back in 1857, they still turned the other way when the enslaved people were brought along on vacation. Now, this wasn't just a quick trip like we think of today. Back then, families stayed for the whole summer, sometimes months at a time. And that gave Eliza time to observe, time to connect, and time to plan something bold. While she was there, she met Emily and Ralph Gray, a free black couple who were well-connected abolitionists. They introduced her to white allies like Miss Gates and to anti-slavery leaders William D. Babbitt, Ariel Bigelow, and William S. King. Together, they filed a legal complaint saying Eliza was being restrained of her liberty. On August 21st, the sheriff showed up, but he wasn't alone. He came with a crowd of abolitionists behind him. Mary panicked and told Eliza to run, but Eliza didn't run. She walked out slow with her head up and told the sheriff, "I wish to be free." They took Eliza straight to the courthouse, and inside, Judge Charles Vanderburg, an abolitionist, took the bench. Don't forget, an abolitionist were people who basically thought slavery was so bad. Back to the story. Outside, things were heating up. Local white businessmen, terrified of losing Southern tourism money, gathered around the courthouse. They didn't care if Eliza was free. They cared about profit. Christmas's lawyer stood up and said slavery was legal. Eliza's lawyer stood up, read one line from Minnesota's Constitution, and sat back down. And just like that, the judge ruled in her favor. That night, a mob surrounded the home of abolitionist William Babbitt, where Eliza had been staying. But by the time they showed up, Eliza was already gone. She had already been moved to a safe house. A few days later, she gave an affidavit telling her story, likely to the same local allies who had helped her, abolitionists, court officials, and anyone willing to put it on record. And soon after that, she vanished into freedom. Nobody really knows for sure what happened next, but she disappeared. And maybe that was the point, to finally live her life without being watched, owned, or followed. And of course, they didn't want to tell this story because they got outsmarted by a black woman who read, who understood, who strategized, and used their own legal system to take back her freedom. And when the story did get talked about, they didn't tell it right. They called her simple-minded, said she was just lucky, made it seem like she was a pawn, because they couldn't admit what really happened, that she beat them at their own game. And this right here is why they don't teach this story in school, because it doesn't fit the narrative. It doesn't show us as helpless. It shows us as smart, strategic, resilient, and powerful. Eliza Winston didn't run. She stood up, walked into court, and said, "I wish to be free." And then she made it happen. They didn't erase her because she failed. They erased her because she won. So now it's on us to say her name and to tell the truth. Eliza Winston is not a footnote and she's not a pawn. She is the blueprint for how we fought back and won. Remember to comment, like, and share, and subscribe for more stories that they won't put in your textbook. Peace.